For the first time in over a half-century, the Detroit Pistons will be picking first in the NBA draft.
Number one start.
Hey, that's what we do. Y'all came here for the game. Y'all came here for the sport.
Most experts expect that selection to be silky smooth guard Cade Cunningham.
Cade Cunningham goes up off the glass and in.
But this draft has star potential 1 through 5, including former USC big man Evan Mobley, who's already a force on both ends of the floor and is even being compared to Anthony Davis. And then there's Jalen Suggs, who became a household name in the NCAA tournament. Also a two-way player who should instantly improve any team that picks him.
Jaylen, showtime, goes up high, hammers home the dunk.
This draft also has a steady G League presence with Jalen Green and Jonathan Kuminga, who both offer tantalizing upside. And the player who elevated his draft stock the most this past year might be Davion Mitchell, who not only led the Baylor Bears to their first national title, but also took home the Naismith Defensive Player of the Year award.
Davion Mitchell in the open court, you give him a head of steam, he is going to finish at the rim.
We know who they are, but where will they go? The NBA's next wave of stars heading to a new horizon.
Oh, draft night is upon us, and for that, we welcome in CBS Sports college basketball insider and co-host of the Eye on College Basketball podcast, Gary Parrish. Cade Cunningham, basically a lock to go number 1 to Detroit. He can defend 4 positions on the floor, create his own shot, and something you love about him, Gary, is how clutch he was during his one season at Oklahoma State.
Yeah, and it's all in the numbers. You know, he's a 6'8" point guard who routinely took over games in the Big 12 at Oklahoma State, led the nation by a significant number in what the NCAA describes as clutch points. And so you're talking about a really uniquely talented guy, and I'm firmly of the belief that no matter whether it was the Pistons that got the first pick or any of the other 29 franchises, the proper selection at the top of this draft was going to be Cade Cunningham. He can play on the ball, obviously, but he can also play off the ball. Again, just a uniquely talented young guy who projects as a future face of a franchise.
All right, so then it's Cade Cunningham, number 1, and then it's kind of like the 2, 3, 4, the 3 guys at those spots could really go in any order. With the second overall pick, you've got Jalen Green from G League Ignite going to the Rockets. He said had he played college basketball, there'd be different talk about who's going number 1. Do you agree with him?
He might be right. I mean, he was performing at an extremely high level against professionals, former college All-Americans, and so there's no reason to think that if he weren't in college basketball, he would not have been a college basketball star. So I actually do think there's possibly something to that. But in this draft, given the way everything is shaken out over the past year, he's probably got a ceiling of going number 2. And you're exactly right, Hakeem. You know, reasonable people can disagree on the order of Jalen Green, Jalen Suggs, and Evan Mobley. But I do think those players are going to come off the board 2, 3, 4 in some order. And for me, it's Jalen Green coming off at number 2. Why? Simply put, I think he's got the best chance of those players to be a superstar. I'm not promising you he's going to lead the NBA in scoring someday, but I'm promising you he's got the type of talent that makes that possible. 6'5" wing, incredible athlete, explosive in transition, but can also shot create in the half court, and he shot a good percentage from three-point range, and he did all of this as somebody fresh out of high school against grown men, older men, former college stars. There's a lot to like here. And if you're trying to find somebody who's got a chance to be a superstar not named Cade Cunningham, I think Jalen Green is probably where you look first.
All right, the Cleveland Cavaliers have the 3rd overall pick. You've got them taking USC big man Evan Mobley. How are you evaluating his potential in the NBA?
I think he's got a chance to be a star. I mean, I struggle with this between Jalen Green and Evan Mobley. I don't... I can understand how if you're picking 2nd in this draft, even 3rd in this draft, you're really conflicted because you're leaving somebody special on the board. So if the Rockets go with Jalen Green, if you're Cleveland, you get Evan Mobley, and I think you feel great about it. This is somebody who is perfect for the modern NBA in the sense that, you know, he's a 6'11", 7-foot real rim protector, but not just a rim protector. He can also guard in space. He can play in the pick and roll. He can, take a perimeter jumper. He's not completely reliable from the three-point line at this point, but there's no reason to think he won't be at some point. Again, sometimes we're talking about prospects at this point in the drafts who are great prospects but haven't really been great players. This young man has been a great player. He was the Pac-12 Player of the Year, Defensive Player of the Year, Freshman of the Year for all of the reasons that I've already laid out. If you're Cleveland picking third and you end up with Evan Mobley, I think you're thrilled.
Well, I'm a Cavaliers fan. Maybe that'll get me back rooting for the Cavaliers because the last couple of years have been terrible. So, I mean, it does help you get a high draft pick. So maybe Evan Mobley lifts their spirits in Cleveland. And I know they got some young talent at the guard position, but hey, you get a big man. All right, great. Let's go. All right, number 4, you've got Gonzaga star Jalen Suggs going to the Raptors. I've seen him as high as number 2 in other mock drafts. What do you like about Jalen Suggs?
Well, when you talk to Mark Few, who is obviously the Gonzaga head coach, or Tommy Lloyd, the former Gonzaga assistant, who is now the head coach at Arizona, they say nothing but great things about Jalen Suggs. I've talked to both Mark and Tommy about Jalen Suggs specifically in anticipation of this draft, and they talk about how he just adds to your culture, sets your culture. He's all about winning. He's super competitive. He's happy to take over games with incredible talent when necessary, but he can also just blend in if that's what the situation calls for. He's a top shelf athlete, was a high school basketball star, but also a high school football star. And some of that football stuff comes into play when you see him in transition. He can see passes that other point guards can't see. He can make passes that other point guards can't make. And then he's athletic enough to block shots at the rim, as he did in the Final Four, and he's athletic enough to catch lobs if you want to throw lobs to your point guard. The only question here is the three-point shot. He did not shoot a good percentage from three-point range at Gonzaga, but if you could tell me that you trust Jalen Suggs is going to be a plus shooter going forward, then you're talking about somebody who's going to be an all-star many times over. That is the only skill he has to develop to really be special.
Is his swing skill, as you talk a lot about swing skills on the Ion College Basketball Podcast, is that something like his defense, or is there another area of his game?
I think it's the three-point shot. I mean, he's athletic enough and he's got good enough size to be able to guard his position. All young guys have to improve on the defensive end. He's not perfect there, but there's no reason to think he can't really be a high-level on-ball defender. The swing skill, as you put it, is going to be that three-point shot. It's hard to be a star in the NBA these days at his size unless you are a plus shooter. Shooting has never been more important in professional basketball than it is right now. That's got to improve. But nobody I've talked to, or very few people I've talked to, think that that's going to be a long-term concern for Jalen Suggs. Perhaps a short-term concern, but there's a list of point guards who became quality shooters after they turned into professionals. And most people around the NBA that I speak with think that Jalen Suggs is going to be the next.
All right, well, rounding out your top 5, Florida State's Scottie Barnes going to the Magic. I've seen him as high as number 3 in some mock drafts. Why is his stock rising?
I mean, this is a guy who's 6'8", 6'9", and can literally play all 5 positions. You hear people say that all the time about prospects. He can play all 5 positions, but it's almost never true. Like Magic Johnson can do it, and LeBron James can do it, and after that, there aren't many other guys left on the list. I'm not telling you Scottie Barnes is going to play all 5 positions, in the NBA. He won't. But, at Florida State, he did play some point guard. He did initiate offense, and at the NBA level, he projects as a combo forward, somebody who can play either front court spot. If you wanted to play small, yeah, he could play center too. So he won't play all 5 positions. Theoretically, he could. All about the right stuff. You could talk to everybody who's ever known Scottie Barnes his entire life, ask him a million questions, talk for 5 hours. You're not going to hear a bad thing. Loves to win, loves to compete, loves to be in the gym. And I hate to sound redundant, but it's true. The swing skill is the three-point shot. He is not a shooter at this point, but earlier this month, I had a conversation with Stan Jones, the longtime Florida State assistant under Leonard Hamilton, and he told me that, sure, Scottie Barnes has to improve on his jump shot. But, like, you know, if the way to do it is to, you know, work on technique and repetition, get in the gym, get up 1,000 shots a day, then this is a young man who is committed to doing it. He will improve because he's the type of guy that's going to put in the work to do it. Then his stock has really, you know, gone up throughout the pre-draft process because people see all the things he can do. They assume he'll improve the things he can't do well right now, and then all the intangibles is just plus, 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 plus. If you talk to him, you love him.
All right, who's a name that we haven't been talking about enough? Who's your under-the-radar draft prospect to watch?
For me, it's Trey Murphy out of Virginia. You know, this is a guy who's 6'9", legitimate 6'9", and a high-level, reliable three-point shooter. You know, somebody who shot well above 40% from three-point range in his 1 year at Virginia. But before that, played 2 years at Rice and was also a high-level, reliable shooter. So when you come from a Virginia program where you are asked to guard, that's your major role. That's the way Virginia, you know, has become one of the best college programs in America. When you come from that program, you can assume that person can guard his position as long as he's not physically limited. This young man is not physically limited in any way. He can guard his position, and then he can make shots. I'm not saying he's somebody who should be in consideration for the top 5, but when you get just outside of the top 10 or right around it, you tell me I can get a 6'9" shooter who can guard his position. That's the type of player I like in the modern NBA. Somebody's going to be real happy when they take.
Want a sports network that delivers everything that matters about the game? The highlights, the picks, the instant analysis. No yelling, no fake debates, no politics. Hit the subscribe button and never miss a moment.